I miss you.
I miss everybody. So good to see you girls.
Yeah.
I'm ready for Thanksgiving.
I know, right?
Wait for that text message. There we go. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Kiki Lucas, and I am an assistant professor here at Point Park University. Is my second year. I would like to welcome everyone, our student body, as well as those of you that are tuning in from far and near to our alumni series here. So the one thing that this pandemic has graced us with is the opportunity to talk to our very successful entrepreneurial past dancers of Point Park. So this is what we're talking about today. So I am so happy to have two people that I hold very dear to my heart to be able to introduce you to today. We have Marlana Doyle and we have Miss Cheryl Mann. So I would like to welcome both of them today, and they are going to take us a little bit down the road that they have paved for themselves through their dance career, and of course now through their own endeavors that have become so successful. So they've showing their success on the stage and clearly off of the stage. So let's go ahead and start by both of you just kind of introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your journey. Marlana, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So Marlana Doyle, and when I was at Point Park, I was Marlana Walsh, originally from Massachusetts. Went to Point Park in '97, graduated in 2001 with a BA in dance. Moved to Texas shortly after that to dance with the Houston Metropolitan Dance Company. And after my second year, the company fell. I reorganized it and turned it into Met Dance, and that was a good 17-year stint. Just recently, in the last 2 years, I've left the organization and started my own dance studio as well as a nonprofit dance company. And while I was with Met Dance, I danced with many wonderful choreographers and had an opportunity to travel around New York, Chicago, and California, and dance in festivals, as well as here in Texas, and danced with Kiki for many years, and worked with some amazing choreographers. Houston Contemporary Dance Company is the new dance company. It is a 501c3 nonprofit dance organization. It's a repertory dance company. And then I also own and the president of the Institute of Contemporary Dance, which is in Houston as well. It's a new dance facility. We opened during the pandemic, so it's been very challenging but exciting. There's lots of opportunity there, and we'll talk more about all the things that we're doing there. But excited to be here. Point Park was really instrumental in my career. It really helped me navigate how to make things work, especially when we had the reorg in 2003 with the Met, and then me kind of going off on my own. It really did facilitate the best training I could get in the 90s and early 2000s to be a dancer. Things are obviously very different for those that are dancing now than they were when I was dancing, but excited to be here. And I do mentor many, many students to go to college and have a great relationship with Point Park. So looking forward to this conversation. And Kiki and Cheryl were my idols, so it's great to be here with them. I watched Cheryl, a good friend of mine and mentor, Melissa Mann, went to Point Park. She was friends with Cheryl, and that's kind of how I found out about the school. So I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Thank you, Marlana. Awesome. Well, that was a nice little intro, and we will dive in deeper into the fantastic things that are happening in Houston. So thank you. And now I would like to introduce Miss Cheryl Mann, who, yes, she is definitely an idol in Point Park history. And please, Cheryl, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. I was at Point Park in 91 through 94. And I mean, still, it's like it was yesterday. It's like the closest place in my heart. All of the people that I met there, the faculty, everything about that place just became family. So I feel like it really set me up to, go out into the world and really have this sort of inner strength to know that I was on the right path. So I went to Chicago. I had always wanted to dance with Hubbard Street since I was very young. And I moved there and didn't quite get the job right away. So I was dancing with River North for 2.5 years, which ended up being the perfect place for me. I don't think I would have been ready to dive into my absolute dream right out right out of the batting cage. So I loved my experience at River North. I met the most incredible people, understood what it meant to tour and to really handle all of your own things, your costumes, your shoes, and kind of be responsible for everything that you need to get to the stage. And then 2.5 years later, auditioned for Hubbard Street. It was my third audition actually, and got this job that I had been sort of dreaming about since I was a teenager. And stayed there for 10.5 years and traveled some more, and really just every single day, never took one day for granted being there, getting to work with the most amazing people, choreographers, the most brilliant, and dancing, sharing the stage, incredible, was just really unexplainable. But I loved it, and it was over super fast. And then I realized I'm going to have to sort of reinvent myself. So how does one do that when you're in your mid 30s and you've undergone your second ACL repair, and you're sort of like, wow, I have to kind of start this whole thing over again. So luckily for me, while I was dancing, I was diving into photography and doing portraits of friends and companies that were young and emerging, and sort of we were learning together how to capture images, and they were learning how to run businesses, and I was understanding that I was also going to have to understand how to run a business if I was going to continue doing it. And I loved it so much, kept me very close to the dance world. So I wasn't dancing anymore. I felt like I was still part of, embedded in the community through the photography that I was providing. And then it just became this natural progression to move into photography. And I started my own business. And then I had a couple of kids, and then I realized that I was really missing dance. There was something, I had a void of not being in the studio working with the dancers. I was capturing them and capturing moments, but I wasn't able to have a voice and to give anything back of any knowledge that I had gained over the years. So I became the artistic associate of Visceral Dance Chicago, which was an incredible time working with those dancers, being back in the studio with hands free, with no gear or camera, and getting to work with these dancers who were so hungry and able to call upon people that I had worked with in the past, people that I knew who were choreographing at the time, and give them a venue and say, would you like to offer a piece? Or, I really loved this piece when I danced for you. Would you mind if we acquired that as well? And then they trusted me to set these works. And then I got to travel all over the world setting works for Ohad and Alejandro Cerruto, Toro Shimazaki, and Danny Ezerlo, and Nacho Duato. So it's like all of these connections that I made dancing in the company served me later in life because of the trust that I had gained. And it was the biggest honor to get to share these works with other people all over the world. And then my husband got a job transfer, and we ended up moving to LA, which was just not at all like what I had in my mind of where I thought I was going to be in Chicago forever. So we transitioned, and then I started over, and I almost felt like everything I have ever done, no one here knows anything about that. So I felt like, okay, how do we do this? What am I supposed to be doing here? And luckily for me, 8-9 Chicago, I was going to say Dance Chicago. See, it's so in my mind. 8-9 Dance Company had relocated here from Seattle, and Daniela Agami is a former dancer with Batsheva, and I had worked with her at Point Park, and I had worked with her in Chicago. I had known her as a dancer, and I became the executive director of the company because I just really wanted to help her propel her company forward. And what she was missing was staff. She had no staff. So I called all of the executive directors that I knew in the world, and I'm like, help me, what do I need to do? So sort of learning and pulling back from my memory of how things work and how what needs to happen to get a company to stage, and putting on shows and getting tours and presenting ourselves. It was just again, a natural progression that they were here. So that's what I was doing most recently. And now I'm on their board, and that's a whole other slew of responsibilities. And I still have my company, Cheryl Mann Productions. So it's sort of a company with photography and dance sort of all together in one. And that's what I'm doing now.
So great. It's so nice to see powerful women running the arts, and it's nice to, always see a little bit of yourself in front of us. So thank you, ladies, for being such strong pioneers. I would like to start to open up the chat to those of you they're tuned in right now. I'm keeping an eye on it. Until then, though, I'm going to go ahead and allow Marlana. She's going to share with you. She just had a show this weekend, so she's going to give you a little taste of what happens down there in Houston. It's about 30 seconds of footage. So if you would like to go ahead and open up, Marlana, and tell us a little bit about the show and then what we're going to see.
Yeah, sure. So Houston Contemporary Dance Company is in its second season. We started it pre-pandemic, and then it got a little turned around in March, April. So we never really finished our first season. And then during the summer, when the dancers we're a repertory company, so we received all the SBA funding that we needed. That was given out by the government. And I had the dancers in the studio 10 feet apart because there's only 6 of them. And we rehearsed rep, but without touching and with being distanced. And they kind of said to me at one point, like, what are we doing? I said, I don't know, because as all of us were trying to just figure it out. So I, kept them employed. I furloughed them for just 4 weeks while the board and I tried to figure out what to do. And then once we got the funding, we brought them into the studio because I was paying them and I wanted them to stay in shape and I had the space. And so in the summer, I kind of regrouped as an artistic director and executive director because I'm doing all the things. So Cheryl, I totally understand that, as an executive director, it's like, what do we need to do? And I hired Robbie Moore, who is, he danced with Cindy Larby. He grew up here in Houston. He actually reached out to me because he was coming back. And he said, what can I do? What can we do? And I worked with him many times. I actually also coached and mentored him when he was younger. And he went to Juilliard. And so I knew that he would create a beautiful work. We also received a gift from the Larry Kegwin Charitable Foundation to create a socially distanced work. And so I asked Robbie to come in and make a dance. And I gave him 2.5 months to make a dance, which most residencies are a week or 2. And so he had plenty of time to really dive in. They did a lot of writing. And this is just a short excerpt from his piece called I Remember. And for COVID's sake, the Institute is very clean. We follow very strict procedures. The dancers were in masks the entire time. The audience was at a distance and also in masks. And Robbie's piece was done in the round. So the space you're going to see is my space. This is the biggest studio we have. We have a limit of 20 people per night at 6 feet apart, and we have the capability to do that. So I'm going to share with you Robbie's piece. There are 2 pieces, but I'm going to share Robbie's piece with you right now. And let's see, how does that work? Hold on a second. So I need to share. Do you see that? Amazing.
Yes.
This is just a little short excerpt, and there's 6 dancers in this en masse. And as you can see, everyone's around. And then we had a donor donate for lighting because I didn't have lighting in the studio. So we put up some infrastructure in the ceiling, which the Institute paid for. And then the donor, we rented lights just to kind of see. And then as you see on this above the curtains, we have clip lights on there. So we got creative, went to Home Depot and made a space. So here's a little excerpt. Yeah, so it's a little swirly. And there's actually two graduates in that company, Risa D'Souza and Janine Wallace McGrath. She's married now, but they went to Point Park after me. And the critic here calls me Point Park South because I do hire a lot of Point Park dancers to come down here and dance. And we are a rep company, so that's intriguing to most people. I do have a vision, but it's more about bringing in artists to work with us. So that was one piece. Do you want me to share the other, or do you want to?
Sure, you can.
Okay. So then the other piece was made pre-pandemic, and I had asked the choreographer if she wouldn't mind restructuring it to fit the COVID policy, which means no touching. Obviously, they're doing floor work, but they're masked the whole time. And so this is just a quick excerpt from Andrea Don Shelley's work, and it is based off the book The Red Tent. And it's a very female heavy, obviously there's 4 women in this dance, a strong, powerful women piece. And so this is the first piece. And if you see in this work, the dancers it's a proscenium aspect. So we changed the studio. So you come in, you watch this piece, you go in another room, watch a film, because we had a film component as well.
Right.
You go back into the studio. Now your chair is in a different spot to watch the second piece in the round. So hold on one second. Let me share my screen. And this is down here. Okay. So this is Risa right here. She graduated after Janine. This is Janine. She's a little bit older. And this is actually a former student of Kiki and I's, Reagan. She was a Radio City Rockette last year, but sorry, the sun in this room is weird. She was here because of the pandemic. So I asked her to guest with us. And then this is Elizabeth Sutton. She went to University of Arizona and is here as well. Moved here from California. So that one's a shorter one.
Nice. I love it.
Thanks for letting me share.
Of course, I'm so glad that you shared that. It's always nice for our dancers to see what's out there. Yay. All right, let's continue talking. Cheryl, I'm gonna ask you this question. So I teach the entrepreneurship class here at Point Park. So I teach the senior dance majors, and we're always looking into new projects and trying to get our mind off of the stage, right? So what are some things that you could, if you were to tell my class, that are the best thing to think about if you're starting your own business? So like when you first started into your photography business, what were some like key elements that maybe you find really important now?
The first thing I thought about is, do I have enough clientele to carry a business? Because you have to learn all about taxes and about setting yourself up in a business sense. And I really hadn't done anything like that before. I felt sort of propelled into thinking that way because I would shoot people and they would say, okay, well, how much is it? And I would say, I don't know. And I finally had people saying, you have to know how to charge for things. If you don't charge enough, they're not going to take you seriously, and it's almost like, right, like I have to respect myself enough to understand that I'm providing a service, and understanding how to charge people for things was a huge learning curve for me. Also, I just like to give things to people. So I had to learn how to take care of myself also. Tapping into friends of mine who already had established, very helpful as the sort of contract do you use when you are working with a company. What is your hourly rate? What is your half day rate? What is your day rate? Just to have sort of a perspective of what I would charge as someone who was new. The financial aspect of it was very helpful to seek advice from someone who that is doing it already. I would say as much research as you can do with someone in the professional world. Asking questions is just it's gold. You have to have more knowledge to understand how it all works and how to set yourself up to succeed. And also just tapping into your network in general. of people that you know, people that you like, people that you've spent time with, that you know what they're doing and how their knowledge can help you, and vice versa. It's always important to know that the people that you're with right now in school are people you're going to be with and you're going to be seeing outside of school doing incredible things, and you're going to inspire each other, and you're going to miss each other, and you're going to want to work together. So really it's dreaming up ideas and researching the best way to do things, and that starts with asking questions. That's what I would say.
Good stuff. Hey, everyone that's watching, please do not hesitate to put a question in the chat or into the Q&A. I have my eye on it right now. The only thing I'm seeing right now is they love the shadows on the wall and the performance, Marlana. That's one thing that's come up. And while they are getting the nerve to like type out a question, I'll continue a little bit. So Marlana, I remember when we danced together in the company, we called you boss lady. So what are some of what's the most important thing about being a boss to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned over the years that you and I were dancing, and between different dancers coming in and different situations, and now being my own boss, it's definitely different. But I would say the biggest thing that I've had since I left the Met was just being completely transparent. Transparent, honest, and clear, and communicate, because those were the things that were missing between the dancers and myself and the board, or me and the artist that's making the work. And then with the Institute, my teachers, my staff, we have a monthly Zoom call because of the pandemic, which would have been a meeting, but I just feel like it's important that we just check in with each other if there's things. We all get inundated with emails, so the more we can have the conversation, the better. And then also, just trying to pave the way and be really clear about what I see the Institute being as a dance studio, which is completely accessible to everyone, no matter what you look like, race, gender, anything. And then doing some things to support that. So we've had some workshops with the Center for Healing of Racism here in Houston. I've done some some coaching with a social justice coordinator, because I do think that dance sometimes can be very gender specific. And then, we do have some children that are transgender here in Houston, I mean, everywhere, but if they come in, how you talk to them, and to be supportive of that, as well as race, and I mean, everything. So we just been I've been trying to be very clear with my staff about that, and the teachers, and when situations come up, and what I expect. But I will say I have the best teachers in the city. A lot of the teachers left with me, and then I have a youth program that has 21 kids in it. They also came with me when I left, so they've kind of are the bulk of the Institute, and they are successful. I mean, Kiki, you're with me here. We train so many kids that have not just become dancers, but doctors and engineers and, entrepreneurs themselves, at a very young age. And it's an honor to see that. But yeah, still the boss lady, I mean, I have two kids too, like Cheryl was mentioning. I have a 7 and 4-year-old, and due to the pandemic, they're here doing school. So I've now become also a second grade teacher. And it's hard when they're that little to understand Zoom and sit in front of the camera and sit still. So, trying to balance all the things. I get overwhelmed a lot, but, trying to stay calm, as all of us are, trying to navigate what's going to happen day by day, and every day is different. But it's been, I knew I wanted to have a studio, and essentially the plan was for me to succeed the executive director at the Met, but that wasn't her plan or the board's plan, without telling me. And that was always the conversation, but there was never a plan in place. So just, trying to go off of what I know, and make it work So.
Cheryl, you kind of touched on this already towards the beginning of our conversation, but what are some of the ways that you think that your dance career has really paved your path, especially, from the stage to photography to your own business? What are just some of the perks you got from?
Well, I was extremely fortunate because when I started shooting, I was still dancing. I was still very much in the company. I started shooting in 99, And it's because I had also a back surgery on my lower back. I had a herniated disc, so it put me out of the studio for a while dancing, but I could still kind of hang out in rehearsals and in the wing on the side of the stage. The crew let me do that, which was nice because the dancers trusted me to get out of their way, because I know the rep, if I'm not going to be in their way, I get their permission. If anyone feels uncomfortable, I was always very sensitive to that, because everyone has a different process on stage of like comfortability. And but some are like, I don't care, yeah, sure, take pictures. So I would just started shooting in the wings, and then I would go to the dark room and play around with these pictures and sort of spend that time being productive instead of feeling sorry for myself. And being on stage and with them on stage was very helpful for me. So I ended up having a few images that I really loved from the side that is a different perspective from seeing it from the front. So it became this thing of like, oh my God, these are so cool. Maybe I could fix it and go to a different wing and get a better result tomorrow. So it almost felt like dance became like you self-correct when you fall out of a pirouette. And then I take a picture and the lighting was a little bit off. So I changed wings and I'm self-correcting my angles. So dance really shapes how I feel about taking pictures and how I shoot and how I frame things, and how I interact even with my subjects. It's very light and fun and calm, and we're trying to create something together. So it feels very, very similar to me to incorporate how I work as a dancer as to how I work as a photographer.
Fantastic. Very clear. So we have a question in the chat, and it says, what challenges have you faced? What would you pass on to women trying to build their own business in the arts? Anybody want to tackle that one? And then Cheryl, there's one specific for you, but let's start with that one.
Marlana, you want to go first?
Sure. So, challenges, I will say, being a woman, I had to get a loan to build out the space, for construction. And it was the first time I felt segregated against, because the only way I could do it was with my husband. I had to kind of also prove myself over and over again to different banks, that I know what I'm doing. I've been in this business for a while. Even though I never owned anything, I pretty much ran a dance studio and, grew up in a studio and went to college for dance. So that was one of the challenges I had to face, was trying to figure out the funding. And the other thing is just, we are dancers. We'd rather be on stage. I mean, I was the artistic director of the Met, so I knew what needed to go into it. But then I also had to figure out, like taxes and, getting a bookkeeper, getting a lawyer, getting all those things and those people to play. I don't feel like I could be an accountant. You hire someone to do that. And, getting those people that I could trust and explain the situation. And it's hard because the Institute is an LLC, but then the Houston Contemporary Dance Company is a nonprofit. And we were fiscally sponsored for a year, which means we had another arts organization like Fractured Atlas. Here it's called Fresh Arts in Houston. We were kind of under their umbrella of their 501c until we got our 501c. And a 501c can take 2 to 3 years. I got it in 6 months. So I was just very aggressive about pushing forward with the IRS and my lawyer to get the form filled out. And Kiki, we talked about this with the kids when we had your class about entrepreneurship, and then dealing with the nonprofit side, but then also the business side. So in LLC, I don't need a board to approve everything. I'm the owner. I can make a decision. My husband is the CSO, and then I have a studio education director. So she kind of oversees, but and I'm very transparent about the books and let her see everything. And because that was one of the things at the Met that was not disclosed. I never saw a bank account in 17 years, statement or books. So trying to be clear and moving forward. But I would say those are the challenges, educating yourself, and being a woman, trying to get a loan. But I did get it, and obviously everything worked out, but it was a challenging time. And then also, Cheryl knows, being a mom on top of that, and just trying to stay up with all the things that come into play, and hiring people and trying to find front desk people, and there's there's so many things. So, but I'm a Virgo and I'm very good at organizing and keeping everyone in line as much as I can, but things do come up.
Always happen. Write a book, I'd definitely buy it. How to Organize Your Life by Marlana. All right, Cheryl, this one is definitely thrown your way. It says, Cheryl, have you found that dancers photograph dancers the best?
Have I? Say again?
Have you found that dancers photograph dancers the best?
Oh,
Would be fun.
I am partial to thinking yes, because when I shoot the Joffrey Ballet, that they're my I'm the official photographer for the Joffrey Ballet. So I don't ever have the opportunity to see a run through before I shoot a tech, and they only do it one time. So the benefit for me being a dancer is that I know how to understand how someone is about to jump, someone is about to get lifted, someone's about to fall, and that's something that I can feel. So I've sort of become the person that's on stage and pretend like that's me, so I can sort of feel what they're feeling. It's very an emotional thing for me when I shoot live performance, because I cry a lot and I laugh a lot depending on the piece. I'm 100% immersed onto the stage with them. Also, I know a lot of the dancers too, so it's also personal for me, which is nice. And being, I just turned 48, so I feel like there are a lot of dancers that I know out in the world and that I've worked with from setting work. So I do always have like some sort of a connection to people that I'm shooting, which is nice. And I do think it is a plus to be a dancer shooting dance. I do know photographers who didn't dance, have never danced, and it's a bit of a learning curve for them, but it's not impossible, to shoot dance as a non-dancer. I just think that we have an extra edge when it comes to that.
Good, true.
Mhm.
Yay. All right, the questions are rolling in, ladies. Here we go. Next one's a big one. I actually have the same question for you all. So I think you both can tap into this one for our audience. What are you hopeful to see in the dance world after the pandemic, on stage and the business side of things? Dun, dun, dun.
Good one.
That one to get your brain going a little bit.
I just can't
We're
wait to
all
see
thinking
dance on
about it.
stage again. I just can't wait to see anything live again. It's right now it's having to figure out how to engage people in this atmosphere. The dance, it really isn't meant to be experienced this way. It's, unless you have a budget to make an incredible dance film that's riveting and, that you can do all kinds of things that you can't do in person. Okay, there's Leo. Sorry, I have kids and they're here, so we'll see. I think that companies, this is an opportune time to sort of set yourself up for when we can open up the world again, to organize yourselves structurally, financially, finding ways to, cultivate that sort of cushion financially, any way that we can. I mean, reminding people that we're here and that it's important and there's a need to fund and to keep this going. And even though you're not seeing a performance, there's so much that goes into that performance, and without support, it's virtually not going to happen. So we just need to remind the world that all of us have to pull in together right now, and we have the time to really sit and focus and dream and set ourselves up for when it's time. Boom, it's go time. Let's get that up there. People are still finding ways to dance like Marlana, and you can do it responsibly, and it's not perfect, but it's enough to keep the hope alive and to keep morale up, and to strike when the time is right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Marlana, would you like to touch on
I definitely agree with that. And honestly, it was what we're doing this past weekend, and we're doing it again next weekend, is just, it's a sense of need for the dancers, like their mental health, and being a rep company and having works that were just made on them that we couldn't do anymore, and then having 2 new things come in, it kind of engaged them more and it made them more excited And because we're only in our second year, like it's not a time for me to go like, we're good. I felt like the board felt like, if we could do it safely, we should try to do it. And honestly, we sold out every show because we're only allowing 20 people. So, and we are going to stream it later. I just, my husband's a videographer and photographer as well. And so he has his own production company. He is so busy. And he's a one-man show, and everyone here in Houston is just very demanding of his time. But he's streaming every night. I mean, someone is streaming something, and he's shooting the opera and then he's streaming it, so, and I wanted to just make sure that we didn't go completely away. So last night we had a donor show, and the donors were all feeling very comfortable in the space. And then also, inspired the fact that I haven't shut it down, because a lot of them did give in the first year, but I didn't also want them to think I was just hanging out with their money, kind of thing. So it was really great to see, and the feedback was really beautiful, and to give the opportunity. But yeah, I agree with Cheryl. I mean, we have to take this time to kind of hone it in, and for the studio's sake, we're only operating at 50% occupancy, and so I can't be at full capacity because I do have boxes, and we are 6 feet apart, and there are masks wearing. So I look in those studios and see 10 dancers, knowing I could fit 50 in some day. And so I use that motivation to keep me going, and try to focus on what the future will be. But I know we will get through this. And everyone says like, it's going to be fine, but when you're dealing with it on a daily basis, it's really hard to see. And you have a bunch of teenagers that don't want to distance and don't want to wear a mask, but I mean, they're doing it. And, if we could just all kind of come together, I think that everything hopefully will be better. It's crazy how out of control, and how widespread, and just how many people have really lost their lives. I mean, it's just really, really sad to think about that. But my board also feels for the nonprofit that art heals, like and that's what I've been telling the audience is like, take a second, just watch, breathe, relax for a second. You're safe, we're safe, and enjoy. And a lot of people have been looking for something to do, and have been really grateful for the opportunity to take an hour out of their day and just watch live dance. So
good stuff, ladies. I'm still looking at our chat here, and there's another question. I think we've kind of tapped into it, but if you would like to take it a little farther, it says, when did you know that you wanted to have another career path within the dance industry? So when did you know you kind of wanted to veer away from the stage and try to go a new route?
I remember almost the specific day. And I remember I was in rehearsal at Hubbard Street, and it was the end of the day. And it was a piece I wasn't doing too much in. So I was kind of off to the side. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I have so much editing to do right now. I don't have time to be here, and I was like, my God, who am I saying that? This is crazy. But it was because photography became my outlet to dance. And I always say that dancers need an outlet. It's kind of problematic to only live, breathe, eat, dance. You go home and you watch dance films, you watch YouTube dance, you talk about dance, you're just a dancer all the time. Like, you also have to tap into other things. I've always felt that feed you. And I was finding that these pictures, like I was 5 a.m. on Photoshop teaching myself how to do it, and playing with all the filters, and playing with the cropping and the layers. And I was like obsessed with it, with these little silly creations I was making, and I didn't even know what time it was. I was losing track of time. So I did begin to realize that it became something that I was like hungry to do, aside from dance. And then having our first Inside Out show that was made in 2000, where the dancers got to choreograph on dancers. And I think many companies do this, but we were allowed to participate in this show any way we wanted. We could stage manage, we could design costumes, we could design lighting, we could choreograph, just dance. And I decided to have a little gallery show before the performance, for that people could come and wander around and wait for the show and see some art. And I paired with a dancer, Greg Sample, who wrote some poetry about each image. And we did like a little collaboration, like exhibits in the front. And that from that exhibit, the art critic of the Sun-Times emailed me and asked to buy 2 of my prints, which just blew me away, because in no way was I ever thinking I would ever be selling just something that I was doing for the show and charge her. And that was the day that I realized, wow, this could be something. This could be something, and it just all kind of clicked.
Marlana, would you like to tap onto that one a little bit? When did you think you wanted to kind of make that switch?
Well, I kind of was forced. Not really. I mean, I left on my own accord, but I mean, we got kicked out of our space, the Met. So, the executive director defaulted a few times in rent and I was trying to fix it. Again, the zero transparency didn't really help. So I just didn't feel comfortable moving forward. And so I left on my own, but yeah, it kind of takes a moment for you to be like, yeah, I can do this. And my husband and like mentors, I mean, and also friends just said, you'll be fine. You can do it. It's fine. You were already kind of doing, but this will be yours. And people love new, and if you do it the right way, and we have a beautiful facility, and then the company is kind of the other side of it. The company wasn't really the idea. It was just the studio first, because I felt like all those high school kids needed a place to go with their teachers that they've been training with for years. And they were my priority. And the parents were a little nervous because it was in July, like right before school starts. And so once I told them I had a plan, and we figured it all out. And for a year we were kind of renting different studios all over Houston while I was building out the space. So that was kind of interesting, but those kids hung on, and then the pandemic happened. So, and a lot of people are saying, if you can survive this, you'll be fine. And those kids have all stayed with me, and now they have a space to be in with restrictions, but at least they have a studio, a beautiful studio. So that was kind of, the June, July when I left. But I also knew I always wanted to, have a dance studio, but not like a competitive dance studio, like a training facility, and kind of look at those bigger hubs like Hubbard Street and Ailey, just like places where people can go and take a class and not have to commit to much, but then also training little kids to kind of bring them up. And the only thing here in Houston is really Houston Ballet. That is the prestigious, big school. And it's obviously very ballet centric. So having a contemporary school, we still teach ballet. And we're literally 1.5 miles from Houston Ballet, but another place for people to come. And then celebrating the diversity here in the city. I mean, we have world dance, we have Afro dance, we're going to have salsa, we're going to have ballroom. We have more things down the pipeline. It's just with the procedures and the COVID cautions, we're kind of halting on that. So yeah, I guess I would say, and then I had a baby. I was dancing till I was 6 months pregnant with my first. And that was the first time I had to physically stop. I mean, I tried, right, Kiki? I tried, but I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was in a unitard with like a basketball. Well, it's a little bit bigger than that. And people would come up to me at APAP and they're like, you have to be careful. You have a baby in there. And I'm like, I know. So that was my sign to be like, okay, we need to like pull this back. So I physically couldn't dance, right? And then those, that first year after you have a child, it's a lot on your body and trying to get back. And I ended up, really stepping into the artistic director role at that point, like really figuring out what this is and how this works while also being a new mom. And, that was kind of a learning curve. And then I did it again 3 years later, and then I was okay with retiring. I mean, once Kiki left, I was dancing with her for many years, and some of our other friends. And I just felt like, you know what, I'm good. I'm good with dancing. I just want to be on this side. And I get joy watching them dance. So like you're saying, Cheryl, with like, you're a part of the performance. That's how I feel now, like watching even that video, like it's emotional for me, and it makes me proud of them. And this is not as micromanaging as I was at the Met. Like I literally walk in, they've already warming up, they're going over things. Like I say a couple of things, but I don't need to be like on them all the time. And they're just really a good group of people. And we have a few guest artists with this as well. The gentleman in the video with the ponytail, he grew up here, but he was in Sleep No More. And obviously that shut down. He lived in New York for many years, moved back, and he emailed me and I was like, great, done. You're a guest artist, like, let's bring them all in. So giving opportunity like that too feels good for me, to these people, especially now surviving this pandemic and being home where they don't want to be. They want to be in New York, but knowing that there's not much going on there. So giving that opportunity. So I would say, yeah, all those things.
Okay. All right. Ooh, here's another good one. It says, what has been your turning point, your learning experience of your career so far? So your biggest turning point within your career. What do you think,
Oh,
Cheryl? Ooh,
there's
digging
been
deep.
so many because I feel like you just constantly are changing. Your
True.
environment is changing. Um, when you're dancing, your chemistry, because your dancers change. Some come in and some leave. Some you're there for years and you have a family and one leaves and it's never the same. Um, Moving into photography, I really focused on it. I took 7 years away from being in a studio to focus on that career. And then realizing as I'm pregnant with my child that I wanted to be a whole person. And if I didn't have dance back in my life, I wasn't going to be the best mom I could be. So I put dance back into my life, and then moving to a different state and uprooting yourself from your 20-year network was incredibly challenging and important for me to go through. And I never understood why, until years later when you realize, okay, you're given these challenges to grow. You can't get too comfortable in one spot. So it's really hard for me to pinpoint one moment that was defining for me. I feel like I've just been on a constant journey of growth. That's kind of how I feel.
That's a good way to be, Cheryl.
Mm.
Good way to be. Marla, do you have anything that's like a definitive moment that you could say? No.
No,
Say.
I mean, I kind of already kind of touched on it, the summer and then when I had both my kids were moments of like, oh yeah. But also kind of the progression of still trying to dance and run a dance company and learn all those ins and outs. I will say that Dance USA is a national service organization. I have been on the board for them. And I feel like they have been really instrumental in helping my career move forward as the director side. Talking to our artistic directors from all over and networking and meeting choreographers. And then, trying to take chances on choreographers, right? So when you are a rep company, you bring in these people and you're not sure what you're going to get. And some things are amazing and some things really just fall a little flat, but taking risks I think are really important when you own a business and when you run a dance company, and being okay with failing. It's not that I've ever failed. And I think, these voices have come through well, but sometimes it doesn't jive with the audience or people want to know what was that about, and that's my board chair said this last night at the show, like contemporary is you have to give yourself room to be okay with feeling uncomfortable and knowing that, we can still observe and watch and maybe have feelings or maybe not, and that's okay. We also titled the show Coalesce, and he mentioned it as well, like, it's kind of bringing people together, but and feeling that kind of relationship that we have really lost in the last year or 8 months. It feels like it's been a year, and kind of understanding that art can heal. It can be a part of your everyday life. So yeah, I feel like the turning points were just those two main things. I mean, I just kept chugging forward on this slow train and then went to the other side. So it's still all very new for me. And it's great to talk about it because it's a little therapeutic, but and actually I was having a conversation this morning with Bridget Moore, who is the former artistic director of Dallas Black Dance Theater, who had a similar thing happen to her. So it was just comforting to hear that this happens in the dance world. And, there is change and change is good and change can make you thrive. And I feel like I'm at a point now that I'm in my 40s that it's okay. It's not what I thought it would be my life, but starting over is also not a bad thing. I mean, Cheryl, you had to do the same thing, right? You had to move to LA. And it kind of pushes you to figure it out. And I feel like, we're women, we're strong, and, we're moms. I mean, you just figure it out, you make it work. So.
I thought I did it and I undid it. I'd like to direct this towards you, Cheryl. So social media right now definitely is important. And I know that we're touching upon that right now in the entrepreneurship course while we're building their websites and their dance reels and things like that. Do you have any kind of advice or little tidbits of information that you'd like to share, or some
Yeah,
something to make
I'm
this?
an old lady, so I'm like not cool as these kids on social media these days. But I will say something that turns me off of social media is the using it as a platform to complain. And I can't get behind that. For me, I like to put things up that are colorful and happy and funny, inspiring. I feel like people need to laugh a little bit more. I don't think it needs to be, everyone always pretends like they put these pictures up and everything's perfect and look how perfect my family is. And it doesn't always have to be an exaggeration of the truth. It can make you happy to have a picture like that, but there's a fine line of getting on there and just putting things out in the world that make people not happy, and I don't like that. And it makes me uncomfortable. So really, I've strayed away from Facebook completely. The only reason I was on it lately was my birthday, and I get these personal messages from people from my past and my life, even grade school when I lived in Tennessee. It's like crazy that I would hear from somebody from when I was 6 years old that I don't talk to anymore. So for that reason, I think it's insane. But I gear towards more Instagram. It's because they're short and sweet, and it's just kind of like, this is what's happening, or something that made me laugh that day, or something that made me smile, or I kind of stick with that. I by no means am an influencer, so I don't have that sort of following, but I do think that my following is dear to me, and I know everybody pretty much, I would say. My daughter loves TikTok. She's 8, and I like it because she learns dances, and she's dancing, and she's found this like confidence in her movement, and she's like winks and like does these funny weird things, and I'm just like, who are you? But I don't mind it as long as I know what she's watching. And obviously there's unsavory things on there too, but for the discipline of like watching something and learning it and doing it, I think is amazing for them. So I'm slightly behind TikTok. It took me a long time to figure out what it was, but I think it's it right now, to have relevance, to have, if you're promoting yourself, it's important. It's hard to keep up on it. I do think there's a science to it. I know there's degrees that you can get about social media. I know there's a science to when you post and when you don't post, and the type of things that you post, like every third one is this kind of thing, business, family, but I don't have the bandwidth, I don't think, to be great at it, but I do understand it. And I do see the importance of it when done well.
When done well, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, Marla, there's one in the chat for you. It says, Marlana, having a dance studio and having choreographed musical theater shows at Tuts, what's the difference between choreographing for dance shows and for musicals?
So that's a great question. I don't really choreograph for the company, though. I do bring in artists as a repertory company. I made a dance the first season, just because I needed to do something quick for a presenter that asked us to dance at it. But I will say, doing Tuts, having that experience, that was like the September, October last year. So it was Spring Awakening, which Donald Byrd choreographed the original. So those were some big shoes to fill. I didn't watch the show. I refused to watch it until after we were like halfway through rehearsals, because I just wanted to have my own voice and obviously not copy, but like, yeah, I didn't want to say like, oh, he did it this way, I'm going to do this way. Also, the director was very young. She's from like upstate Connecticut, New York, kind of like in that area. And she has done lots of things. And it was funny because as dancers, you want everyone to move all the time. And she's like, less dance, less dance, less dance. And it's like, oh. So by the time we got on stage, she cut like 40% of like what we were doing. And for that show, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's about teenagers and the angst of being a teenager. And so we had some teens from the Humphrey School, which is the Tuts's like lower school. And they wanted to dance. They wanted to dance the whole time. And they were on the set and they sang, but like when it was like we had like two big numbers, they really wanted to dance. And she's like, cut the dance. So it was more movement based. So that was like kind of different for me to work. But I think it was also very inspiring to see. And that was like right when I started all these things, like the studio and the company. It was like right before everything really kind of kicked off, but it was right after I signed my lease for my space. And so having that distraction was good because it helped me focus on what was needed. But I will say it's different. I mean, Kiki, you did Pippin, right? I mean, so it's a different entity, but musical theater people love everything. They love to hug, they love to be there. And that inspired me because sometimes dancers as young, dancers or contemporary dancers or even high school students, I feel like sometimes my students, and I try to remind them, take for granted the fact that they can move and be in this space and learn these works. And they're just, don't complain so much. And I feel like the musical theater kids were just very like, let's do all the things, and were inspiring for me and I inspired them. It was also different because actors tend to really get into their character. And so it was right after I choreographed the first number, which was, I don't know if I can swear, but it's Bitch of a Living, which is part of the show. But the Mortz, who's the very angsty, he's the one that ends up committing suicide in the show. He said, well, what is my character feeling right now? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know about your character, but like, I literally said, well, the director wanted me to take everyone on the same journey. So here we are in the classroom, and we were like moving desks and like dancing on the desk. He's like, but what am I supposed to feel? And so that kind of threw me off. I mean, I literally was like, oh yeah, they need to like get into that. And with dancers, I feel like sometimes the choreographer makes the work and then it's like, what are we feeling? How do we feel in that moment? Or what are you saying? And lately with my dancers, it's been like, look up because the masks are here. So it's like, stop looking down, like we have to see your eyes and you have to express with your eyes but this is all we see. So that was kind of interesting. It's definitely a different animal. And it was a great experience. And I look forward to, more opportunities. I also choreograph for Houston Symphony here in town, and talking to the opera now about being a movement director again for opera singers who don't move fast. If they need direction. And then I worked with the Houston Chamber Choir as well. So, there's lots of collaboration happening here in Houston. There's lots of arts, lots of diversity. And so I was, grateful, but it's definitely different. It's definitely different.
All right. Cheryl, since now you're shooting more than just dancers, do you have a specific thing that you're really interested in shooting now? Is there something that you found a new love within photography? Or is it still loving the dance?
For me, I mean, I love portraits of people. I like quiet moments with people and showing different sides of people, maybe the real side of people. I've worked with some actors recently, and I always just kind of want to get who they really are, not who people think they are. And sometimes it's hard even for them to know, like who they are, who they're supposed to be. Because I just shot Marvin Jones III recently, and he's like, I need to take some, for my agent, for what she needs from me from TV. He's like, but I really want to play with some different ideas too. Because they're not always getting to present themselves in their light. They sort of have to provide what's needed of them or expected. Right. So for me, it's really fun to tap into that other side, and maybe it's a little darker, maybe it's not so commercial and bright, maybe there's only a single light and it's a silhouette of someone thinking or scratching their head. I like creating those moments with people because I think those are more real for the subject and for the person in front of me, trying to find their humanity rather than their persona of what they've created on TV. Those are my favorite things one of my photographer friends in the past always says, always take some for them and always take some for you.
Mm.
So I really do try to think about that. Like, while I have this person in front of me in my studio, what would be something that would be meaningful to me to have this time with the person? Because for a long time, all I felt like I was doing was what people needed of me. And then I started losing my creativity of all of those gallery shows that I was having back in the day, doing conceptual works and taking my friends out and, just messing around and climbing trees and, just playing, getting, swimming out to that rock and hanging off of a limb. And like, I lost all of that once it came to a business of like having to do what other people needed. So I always would let them know, like, okay, let's play a little bit, let's take let our guard down. And I always think that that's the most fun for them too.
Right.
And then they get something, they're like, wow, this is awesome. I didn't think, like, I really like that. I never liked pictures of myself. That's my favorite thing to hear, because I don't really know, but I can say, I don't like taking pictures. I don't like being in pictures also. So I know how that feels. And I never want to put someone in front of the camera longer than we have to. So I know, like, if we like something, we're going to move on. We're not just going to beat that old horse. Like, we like it, so let's do something else, and the more we keep moving, the more relaxed they end up getting, and the more successful the shoot can be.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Did it again. The questions in the chat are starting to slow down a little bit, but I would like to ask both of you this question. If you were to tell your 22-year-old self something, what would it be at this point in time? Basically, what would you pass on to these up-and-coming, beautiful young artists here that we have at Point Park, who are hopeful to have careers like yours, adventures like yours, and maybe start their own endeavors like yours? So just think about that and give us a little answer.
I'll go first. I would say just don't give up, and have no regrets. Those are my two mottos. And my third is everything happens for a reason. So, sometimes things don't. Probably when I was 22, I had a plan, but there was a point there when the Met reorganized the first time, which should have been a red flag, that I was going to move to New York, but I ended up staying, and keeping that organization going. And I don't know if I made a different decision, where I'd be now. I kind of think about that sometimes, because I was 23, and all the dancers were fired. So it's like, should I move to New York? I mean, that would have been that, or Chicago. Like those, I did go up to Chicago. I took class at Hubbard actually, and I met Robert Battle up there. He's a good friend and mentor of mine, and he was setting a work somewhere up there. And then I went to Pittsburgh and took pictures with Drew. Oh my gosh, everybody remember Drew? Is he still around?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, at Lighthouse Photography. Like, I was like, I need new headshots. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. What are we going to do? And so, just that year was like, and I talked to you, Kiki, you were in LA. I was like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? So, if I didn't stay, if I didn't keep pushing forward, I don't know where I'd be. So I would say no regrets. Everything happens for a reason. If it's a bad choice, it will figure itself out. And don't give up. Like, that's been my motto the last couple of years, is just keep pushing through. And, I like when people say, I'm so proud of you, because I'm like, oh, good. Because sometimes I'm not proud of, I'm proud of myself, but like, it's good to hear that. And all of our donors last night, like, you did amazing. And I had to take a step back and look at the space and go like, yeah, this is mine. Like, it's just, you are just so in it, and you just keep going, and so, and you've said that to me, Kiki, and then some of my good friends have been like, you just have to stop for a second. I'm like, yeah, but we got things to do. So, yeah, and maybe slow down. This is the Italian in me. It's just like, let's go. I'm a fixer. So yeah, I would say those three things.
Good. Cheryl, what are your tidbits of advice for these young ones coming up?
I would say let go of expectations of what you think is going to happen. Being inspired and being ambitious are important things, but expecting something is setting yourself up to fail, because you can't really control anything that happens. You can't control who gets this job, which company stays around, who fits into that costume. You know, it's a lot. There are a lot of variables to ending up wherever you are. And then once you are somewhere, really take time to look around to see who you've been put with, who are you in the room with, and why. There's a reason that you've met, and you may not know it or see it at the time, but these are people that end up being in one place at one time for a reason. And that's really important to know and cherish. So you, even if you don't get along with someone, there's a reason you were meant to be in that situation. And I think just always knowing that, if you always being okay with, I'll come back to this about asking questions, because if you don't ask a question, the answer is always no. If you need something and you don't ask the question, the answer is no. And if you're afraid of being turned down, you know, and so you don't ask the question, the answer is still no. So I think when you need help or when you feel lost, reach out to people, you know, and you will be surprised at what comes back.
Very good.
And understand sort of maybe what legacy you would like to leave. How do you want to be remembered as a person to work with? Do you want to be someone who is difficult and cocky and talented but difficult, or do you want to be someone who was open and malleable and hungry and kind and talented? You have a choice.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting. If anyone else would like to ask any more questions to our fantastic guest that we have today, I'm going to start winding us up here and just say a huge thank you to Marlana Doyle and to Cheryl Mann for sharing a little bit of their past and now present endeavors, what's happening in their lives and what's part of their journey. And you guys are so special to Point Park, and I'm always to myself, of course. So I've loved today. Nothing made my day. I am so happy to be talking to both of you, and you both have always been superstars in the light of so many eyes. So thank you for sharing everything with us today here at Point Park, and we love you.
Of course.
Thank you,
Thanks for having
Kiki.
us.
So good to see you, Marlana.
Yeah, you too.
You can. We have one more of these sessions, or a few more. Wait, on the 30th, November 30th, I think is the last session that you can tune in to watch our alumni series on Mondays at 4:30. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us, and ladies, thank you so much for being amazing.
Thank you, Kiki.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Thanks.